next item we'll move straight into is around complaints and conduct matters, and I appreciate this is a slightly new format that has been reported on, which I found very helpful. But I'll hand over to you to give a quick update on this one.
Okay, by way of introduction, I'm going to ask John to take us through the report. As you know, this is an ongoing work in progress. It'll be interesting to get your feedback, Commissioner, about whether or not you feel the report is now in the format that you would prefer. I still think we've got a little bit of work to do, but there is some fairly comprehensive detail around all things complaints, and in particular some updates about some of the ongoing cases for the procedure.
Yeah. So we've spoken many times, Commissioner, on many different cases about different types of complaint and conduct matter, and it's very clear from your police and crime plan, as it is from our objectives within professional standards about putting complainants and witnesses at the heart of what we're doing. We've also benefited over the last couple of years from the results of the Crawford review as well as HMIC inspections. So this report is primarily around the statistics, is around the numbers rather than the victim and witness experience at this stage, and that's dealt with in some other reports that we've brought before you. So the total complaints in the last year have risen from 991 to 1,518, and that refers to actual 2,114 different allegations, but in terms of cases there's been an increase. The areas in which that has increased is around discriminatory behaviour, where there has gone from 10 allegations last year to 55. That's a direct result of the changes in our recording practices after the IPCC's National Discrimination Report in 2014, and it was in relation to the types of discrimination that are recorded. In simple terms, if anybody makes an allegation of discrimination and it's now recorded, irrespective of whether there's prima facie evidence or not. A second area that's increased is fairness and impartiality allegations, going up from 133 to 142. This is not a matter of recording change, practice change, but I do feel it's a matter of awareness raising, openness, transparency and encouragement for reporting. Just to give you a flavour of the areas of fairness and impartiality, it's in relation to things such as complainants being unhappy that counter-allegations are not recorded and dealt with during an assault, where people have been issued with harassment warnings due to the complaints made by other people against them, and they then complain against the police officer for a lack of fairness and impartiality, and complaints in relation to investigations where they're the suspects and they complain against the police officers about fairness and impartiality. A third area where we've seen an increase is neglect and failure of duty, from 453 to 712. Again, this is an increase due to recording practices as a result of the recommendations from the IPCC. We're no longer recording matters as minor dissatisfaction, where we were previously advised to attempt to resolve them quickly without the need to a formal complaint, and the IPCC previously advised that you should do this within 10 working days and therefore not go through the bureaucracy of a complaint. But again, they've now requested that we change the approach to that. So that increase is mainly around how we handle the submission of correspondence as much as there's more complaints being made. An example again is officers not keeping people updated during the progress of an investigation, rather than what one would think about outright neglect and failure in duties. So in terms of results over the last year, of those 1,518 cases, local resolution occurs in 47%, so just under half are locally resolved in accordance with the complainant's wishes by local management or the local early resolution team within professional standards. 4% are discontinued or disapplication occurs. 36% are not upheld, so they're investigated and not upheld. 6% are upheld and 7% are withdrawn. So the early resolution and the local resolution is complainant driven and is a swift resolution to dealing with the lower end of complaints. So that's the first part of the report. The second part is in relation to conduct allegations of misconduct in relation to our staff. There has been a rise from 127 in the last 12 months to 142. And the main rise has been around discreditable conduct, where it's increased from 41 to 71. The main areas of concern here for officers and uniformed staff are in relation to inappropriate relationships, potentially with vulnerable people or victims of crime, officers involved in assaults off duty, officers involved in sexual assaults, and officers involved allegedly within drugs. All of these areas are the same within the National Threat Assessment around vulnerability, inappropriate relationships and drug misuse. Again, far lower numbers involved, but equally the serious end of conduct investigation dealt with by the counter-corruption team within PST. Further into the report, you'll see a third section around lessons learned, and there's 13 examples from August where we're seeking to review the lessons learned out of complaints, both internally in terms of the resolution and externally through appeals at the IPCC. And to give a flavour of those, it's advice that the investigation officer's report was unclear and confusing, or it's advice to officers who declined to arrest the ex-partner of an individual and the complainant said that we should have taken further action. It's around not leaving the search details properly completed for an outhouse and not including that in the search record. It's around the clarity of the investigation officer's report and the recommendations. It's in relation to a lady in a care home who was arrested and alleged that the officers had said she'd been discriminated against and treated differently through her ethnicity. But again, there have been 2 other people arrested who were of different ethnicity and treated the same. And it goes on. And amongst them, the point I'm trying to make is there's nothing systemic in huge failures in officer conduct. It's often around, as is always, the clarity of the explanation that we give to complainants, which does need to improve, and how we deal with them, rather than speaking the police language, getting it across into a language that complainants understand. And then the last section of the report is just in relation to the ongoing issues. There currently are 11 police officers suspended from duty and 11 police staff. That's now at a stable level and is consistent with the last 6 to 12 months. I have a restricted report which I'll seek to brief you on in private, if I may, about some of the ongoing cases. And then the last part, really, to summarise the whole position. As I said, this is predominantly the statistical side, the redacted tactical intelligence assessment around complaints and conduct, but we're continuing to work with your office around the changes to the regulations in the proposals as to how and who hears misconduct hearings, and we're continuing to work in relation to HMIC recommendations, again about complaint and conduct handling, as well as the IPCC reports that have come through recently. So in totality, increases in complaint numbers, predominantly based on a change to the way in which we're recording matters, but within those areas we drill down to the different types and levels and work through the 5 district senior leadership team members to address local issues.
Okay, thanks for that report, and broadly speaking, happy with the style and the content of the report, but I think you're right, there's probably a little bit more work we need to do around some of the trend analysis.
I just think a little bit of the analysis and some of the explanation about what we think is sitting behind some of those figures would be helpful, because I'm anticipating you were thinking about asking some of those kind of questions, so I asked John to try and anticipate some of that. But I think actually if we put it up front in the report, it would be very much easier for everybody who might want to have access to it. Yeah,
so if you can just bear with me a little bit in terms of some of the questions that arise, really. And I think you've probably already addressed some of this in what you've said, but clearly there have been, on the face of it, significant increases in the overall numbers, particularly around complaints, allegations. And whilst you know, I accept that the way in which things are recorded now probably accounts for most of that. Are you absolutely certain that is the case? And you know, is it not just about the recording practices?
So if we take the discriminatory behaviour allegations, there's a direct correlation between the numbers coming through the front door that become a complaint or previously dealt with through a miscellaneous incident. And there's almost a one-for-one transfer of that information across. The reassurance we can give is that we also have the professional standards independent advisory and scrutiny group again who look at all of these complaints. And as the recording practice has come through, we work with them. The important bit is that it was previously recorded, it's just in which the category in which it was recorded. So, yes.
Okay. I mean, you've touched again on the IPCC, and they've recently introduced some new guidelines around handling of discrimination cases. And I know that West Yorkshire is hosting an IPCC event actually in September this month to look at the guidelines. Have you sort of got any steps in mind to look at the implementation of this, given the way in which these figures have increased?
Yeah, the head of professional standards is obviously dealing with the implementation of the recommendations, and we're going to review and scrutinise those through the Equalities Board and the way in which we deal with the operational side through the local accountability meetings. So we're just working through those and how we're going to implement more.
Okay, and just drilling down a little bit more into some of the districts. So Calderdale, for example, has seen an increase in the number of complaint allegations over the last 12 months of about 60%. Is there any particular reason for that?
Not that's been identified through the liaison from professional standards and the district. There's an element, as you're aware, within Calderdale in relation to the numbers and the smallness of the district. So it unfortunately has a small increase, has a disproportionately high effect upon their numbers. There's no particular course of culture or conduct change that is causing a specific area of concern.
Okay. So we have discussed in the past the business of service recovery pilot work around local resolution of complaints, and again I know you mentioned this within your report, but could you just update me in terms of the plans to develop this approach in making sure that lessons can be learnt? And I'm also aware that, having spoken to colleagues in the Police Federation and in PSD, that certainly they recognise the real value of, where appropriate, local resolution being achieved to stop something escalating into a more serious complaint when it can actually be dealt with upstream, as it were.
I mean, we are absolutely determined, as you're aware, the Chief and the COT, that it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do with complainants and victims. We have a proposal from the Professional Standards Department that they've worked up with the Programme of Change team as to how we could resource that. It also includes some other areas of centralising some of the other aspects of professional standard investigations as well. In these challenging, difficult times, the issue is down to resources, and so it's on the command team agenda. The issue is around how we resource it, because we're getting to the position where it's potentially taking resources off the streets in order to facilitate it. So the answer is we will do it, but we're still working through how we're going to do it and where we're going to find the resources from.
There's also an issue, Commissioner, with the Home Office consultation, and so it feels as if there's a number of things almost conflicting with one another here about what the best approach is. We all recognise what the benefits were, because to have that massive increase in terms of locally resolved cases and therefore early resolution for complainants are really important. But we want to make sure that whatever process we do put in place has synergy with whatever comes out of the Home Office consultation. So a little bit like when the Crawford report was undertaken, it was a bit of ahead of its time, and so we very carefully worked our way through that. We just want to make sure that whatever we put in place has also got some sustainability about it. And resourcing clearly is key, but there are some opportunities with moving to the newest operating model that we can have a look at in terms of how we might do that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the pressures between maintaining frontline services and putting resources into complaint handling, if you like, or something around this early resolution. But I think on balance, this has a beneficial impact overall. And the Crawford Review, yes, we undertook it because we felt it was the right thing to do at that time. You have touched on that the Home Office are out to consultation on changes to the complaints and conduct regime, but hopefully there will be some flexibility within there for us to agree within a framework what is the best approach locally. So I wouldn't necessarily expect that the local resolution work to be thrown out, because it certainly will be my view locally that it is worthwhile continuing with that approach in a sensible way, an affordable way obviously, and work within this office. You know, as you know, we work closely with the Professional Standards Department to try and ensure that the role of myself and the office is there very much as an oversight of the system, to try and give confidence to the public that their complaints will be handled in a proper way.
I think this is one of those areas, and we may end up over the next couple of years having several similar discussions where the size and scale starts to become an issue for us. So an obvious solution here would be to centralise the process and the delivery. But that feels completely at odds with the very phrase local resolution. So at the moment we've got locally based teams looking at these particular types of issues. We could get the economies of scale by centralising it, but then what would that actually look like in terms of delivery and direct contact with complainants? So it's this particular issue that we're wrestling with at the moment, hence the work that Programme of Change have also been involved in.
We'll report back to you of our lateral. We've had the paper once, it's gone back. We're on with it. It's just
Yeah, I would appreciate that, because I know it's something we have discussed on a few occasions, notwithstanding some of the pressures that I know come with this, but on balance I think it is the right approach overall. Yeah. Just in relation to conduct matters then, again on the figures that we have, you know, a significant increase in those types of allegations, and it's the same question around any particular reason other than the recording aspects.
I think on this one it is a matter of sadly it's a success in terms of the proactivity and the investigative ability of the counter-corruption team. So the increased work they do does bring in more conduct matters in relation to, you know, rooting out those people within the organisation who have made deliberate and inappropriate decisions to conduct themselves in a certain manner. So it, again, still proportionately low numbers at 142 for an organisation of this size, but it's put down to the work of the counter-corruption team.
Okay, so that's the proactivity then of setting a standard and treating those cases appropriately. I think what was useful within the report was the lessons learned from appeals, and it was just a question around are these then shared across the force with regards to how lessons are really learned and the incorporation of this into best practice.
So of course on the individual basis the officers concerned get feedback and their supervisors. We then have a number of communication methods which we're still reviewing, not least one of which is the professional standards report called The Standard. We're trying to establish the penetration of it. We also use the beat and other more informal methods through supervisors or roadshows and surgeries that the PSD department holds. So there's not one method, but we use a whole host, but certainly the individuals get the feedback. But we're just reviewing again the penetration of that as to how we best get the information to staff.
I don't think we can underestimate the penetration that the Federation support us with on this particular matter, because they listen very carefully to the rationales that have gone on behind, when we were doing the appeal process and everything else. And then because they have their own network of discipline advisors, that's also a very, very useful network for us to get those lessons learned out through.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear, and I know, as you say, the Federation have been supportive in this, and I guess given the investment we're making into technology and handheld technology, I just wondered if there's a way of disseminating these things more effectively and quickly through some of the technology we now have as well.
Yeah, and of course it's investment in technology which also is going to be very, very helpful, particularly with the body-worn cameras, which we've discussed before, around a very, very quick initial assessment of complaints about whether it's stop and search that we've just been talking about, or indeed other matters. We'll be able to make that assessment in far quicker time.
Okay, I think we've explored that one in some detail, and appreciate the information and the detail that's included in that report. So thank you.
Thank you.